Hello there! Games Workshop have just released an errata for the indexes for Warhammer 40,000. What does this mean for Genestealer Cults? Let's have a look. Hi there, and welcome back to Purple Knight Games. And we are talking the index errata today and what this means for Genestealer Cult. Now, this is just a change to anything on the indexes that was either mistaken, not worded properly, was a clear error, and just provide some clarification as the rules were intended. This is not a big update, so there shouldn't be any purposeful nerfs to anything. This is how it's just making sure the game was run as it was intended, as the index was written. No, the big nerfs Genestealer Cult are going to get are going to come probably when the new meta is released by November, when they release the Balance Status Slate. After all, with a 65% win rate, Genestealer Cults are possibly the best faction at the moment, so some sort of nerf is going to happen. But hey, for now, let's just jump on in and have a look at those changes on the indexes. So here we are, this is the errata for the indexes. Ignore these fellows, Necrons, the X4, and they'll be conquered at some point soon anyway. So these are the main changes. There's two changes to the Cult Ambush rule, and one changes to Alien Jackals. So let's just have a look at the Cult Ambush rule. So the new change comes here after it says about battle lines going on with adding the 3. On a 4+, add a new unit to your army identical to your destroyed unit in Cult Ambush at its starting strength and with all of its remaining wounds. And you can place one Cult Ambush marker. So what this is saying essentially is when you place a unit down in Cult Ambush, it is a new unit. It has to be identical to the unit you've put down, or that was wiped out, and it's at its starting strength. So essentially, the big thing is with a unit of acolytes, which with demolition charges, you've already thrown your one-use weapons. It's a new unit with its starting strength, so it has its one-use weapons back. At least that's what it appears to be saying. And I say appears because it says identical to your unit destroyed. So it says identical unit destroyed as the one-use weapons being used, therefore can't be come back, but it does say starting strength. With its starting strength, it's all its war gear. So I'm 90% sure what the mean is everything comes back as that unit was at the start, and it counts as a new unit to get that lore, that narrative of waves upon waves of cult units rising up and charging you. So that is how the rule is intended. So yes, one-use weapons can come. It's stating identical to the unit destroyed because it is to stop you from changing war gear throughout. It should just state this specifically that you have the starting war gear for the unit that was lost. That would make more sense to say that. It's just so you don't sort of change out, let's say, mining lasers for seismic cannons, flamers for webbers, or changing out, putting demo charges in and taking out your mine lasers from your acolyte units, for instance. But it's that whole thing of a new unit and starting strength. So the interpretation of the rules here is to say that yes, one-use weapons are back and can be used again. Now, many tournament organisers have already said one-use weapons are once per battle. Doesn't matter what unit comes back, you can't use them again. Will tournament organisers change with this errata? I would probably say not. I don't think they will. So even though this is the rule, this is a correction, this is the rule as intended, don't expect it to do it at most tournaments. Games Workshop organised ones, yes. Any independent organised ones, UKTC have already FAQ'd this and said basically no one-use weapons are one use only. You cannot use them again, even if that unit comes back or a new unit comes back, because the same models they're saying, and they'll stand by that. So I don't think that changed anything. So don't expect it in tournaments. The next part of it, when you go further down, is when you're setting your units up. So at the end of the reinforcement step of your opponent's next movement phase, for each of your Cult Ambush markers that is still in the battlefield, you can select one unit from your army that is in Cult Ambush, and, now this is a new part, set up that unit on the battlefield more than 9 inches horizontally away from all enemy models with at least one model touching that cult ambush marker, and all other models placed wholly within 3 inches of that cult ambush marker. So, what does this affect? This stops you from stringing out your units across the battlefield when they come back from cult ambush. That was happening in tournaments. Personally, that's something I've done. Mind you, I've only played 2 games and not actually brought a single unit back on yet. So yeah, I brought 3 units back on, but they never got to do anything. We had to finish the game. So I'm not the best place to say how well this is going to be in terms of actually practically using this, but it's going to be much more difficult because everything has to be within 3 inches of that marker. The marker is 32mm marker, so you're looking probably just less than 3.5 inch radius around that marker, bringing things on. Now the 9 inches away from other units, that is only horizontal, so if they're above you in a row, it doesn't actually count, which is interesting. But yeah, 9 inches away is put into the cult ambush. It was in the commentary that you had to still come when units were coming back on. The had to be 9 inches away. So if your opponent moves up 10 inches from the marker stays there. When you bring your units back on, you've only really got about 1.5 inches to work with at the front part. Maybe you have more, maybe towards the rear. But if they surround those markers, and therefore they're going to restrict what you can bring back on. 10-man unit of neophytes, 5-man units of acolytes, maybe even 10-man unit of acolytes are probably absolutely fine for the most part. But those 20-man units, it's going to be difficult getting them into that bubble, because not only have you got the whole fact that most of them are on smaller bases, but 4 of them are on bigger bases with your heavy weapons, and just getting 20 of them into that bubble is going to be difficult. But it's very much doable. The issue arises with Outland Jackals. If you roll your 4+, they come on. One of their rolls is they have to come on at the edge of the battle anyway, edge of the battlefield. And then if you've got unit 10, how are you going to get 10 bikes and 8 bikes and 2 wolf quads wholly within 3 inches? I don't think you can. If you have a 10-man unit of Outland Jackals, they're basically gone. You're not going to be able to bring them back on regardless, because they're not going to fit into that bubble. I think maybe for bikes, they could have an extra power for bikes and just take out that wholly within 3 inches. Just having the bike bases within 3 inches. The problem is then, does that open it to interpretation of, again, trying to string things out a bit more? I can see what they're trying to do here, and I can see that they've obviously meant cult units arriving as bubbles, not as stringing across the battlefield. So it's going to be more restrictive, especially if you're in tournaments and someone pulls a clock out and says, right, Genestealer Cult players take forever, so here's a clock, which they didn't take up to do. All of a sudden you've got something else you've got to be faffing on with, which takes time up, making sure everything's within 3 inches. But before just the unit coming down and putting your 20 guys in a line on top of the marker, I don't think you get a lot of advantage from that. But obviously you can't do that, and they have to win within that bubble. And the last rule that's changed is the Outland Jackal's ability Demolition Run, where it's now once per battle round you can generate the mortal wounds, and this stops that ability of the Alphas Jackal going in there, or the Jackal Alphas even, and after shooting you get to make a 6-inch move that counts as a normal move, and therefore you get to farm more mortal wounds. So a unit of 11, obviously with having your Jackal leading them, your Alphas leading them, you're farming quite a lot of mortal wounds just from moving those guys about. You can't do that now. You can only do that once. Once you do that secondary move, you do not get the Demolition Run. So that is a nerf to the Outland Jackals from what they were playing at the moment. But I can sort of see where they're going. I think this is a correction. If this is what they intend to do, well, the Outland Jackals just get to do this once, not multiple times. So what does that all mean? Well, not really a fat lot. It's great you get to throw your demolition charges again when you've used them before. You get to come back on and go woof, boom, and make mincemeat of another unit. Although you'll be starting back in, as you call it, ambush marker, so you won't be able to drop them dead close anyway. So you'd have to move forward and hope you get within 6 inches to do that anyway. So Games Workshop are looking at it and saying, actually, it's not that much of an issue anyway, really, coming on from cult ambush. It's more of an issue using the tunneling strategy. But yeah, in the Meta Mondays, they did say it's very highly efficient to come down within 3 inches with demolition charges, so expect that to be nerfed. We do. However, most tournament organisations, certainly UKTC, have said in their FAQ, you can't use one-use weapons more than once per battle. Yeah, it's been more fiddly putting your units back on, but they're going to be on blobs now. It's going to make things a little bit more time-consuming, making sure things get back on within those 3 inches of the marker. Most units not going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue for 20-man units of neophytes and for bikes as well. 10-man units, I just don't think you can get them back on. If you have a 10-man bike unit of Outland Jackals, I just think if you're using 4+, you're not going to get them back on. So don't bother, which is a shame, really. I think that needs looking at again. But again, why would you take Outland Jackals if you were going for a 10-man unit to try and farm the mortal wounds within stuff with the Alpha's Jackal? Because you can only do it once per turn now. So yeah, a bit of a nerf on the bikes, a bit more faffy with putting guys down, but you can throw your bombers again unless you're playing in a UKTC tournament. So all in all, not a lot has changed. It's a little bit more hard, a bit more faffy. Really putting you guys down is basically it. So let me know what you think. Am I interpreting the rules wrong? I'm 90% sure it says starting strength and new unit, but maybe there's something you know that I don't, which actually you can't use your one-use weapons again. So please do put those in the comments. Also, what's in your list? Let me know. And how's your index being affected? Are you collecting Brood Brothers? I mean, Astra Militarum. How's your index increase gone? Let me know. And all means, you let me know anything you want to talk 40k or Genestealer Cults. Shut them in the comments. We may even talk, if you look at a lot of comments, we may even make a video and talk about questions and comment before. But thank you very much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.